Hi, my name's Tracy Rubel. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I work in downtown San Francisco. I want to talk about women and power and relationships. I think that Sheryl Sandberg has ignited a renewed interest in discussing women and power. I'm sure some people are having an eye roll. She's gotten some criticism. As a couples therapist, I am fascinated by women in power because I think that regardless of the choices that you're making as a woman, in the workplace, whether you really do want to have a high powered job, um, where this all begins is in our families. Women feel empowered and disempowered starting at home, and that family is living in a cultural context, and psychotherapy is living in a cultural context. A lot of psychological theory is rooted in how a bad mom produces a wounded kid, produces a screwed up adult. And so, therefore, there's a ton of pressure on women to be really good moms. Psychological theory doesn't look at fathers in the same way. So, in some cases, I'm always interested in how is psychotherapy helping women challenge the status quo, and how is it perpetuating the status quo? And I talk about that with clients that I see. The other piece that I'm also very interested in is this concept that masculine and feminine isn't male and female, that men are actually suffering at the hands of patriarchy just as much as women, or have suffered. The challenge is that men are celebrated more for adopting feminine capacities. You see men carrying around a baby Bjorn and people cheer him on. He's got his baby, he's taking the dog out, and everybody coos and celebrates him. You see a woman who is embodying her femininity and her masculinity, taking on an executive job or leading an organization or being assertive, and she's reaching too much, or she's a bitch, or she's bossy. So that's the place where we're still struggling, is how, okay, this is great that men are really learning how to embody masculinity and femininity. Women aren't celebrated embodying some of their leadership qualities and power and assertion. I get that for some women, they are not interested in corporate life. And I think it's great that, and I think I so fundamentally agree with what Cheryl's talking about when she says, look, it's not about women should go do this thing. It's about men and women having choices. I have dads in my kids' play groups, and I like having the diversity. Here's what I'm interested in as a couples therapist, though. I think women are still pretty pissed off about feeling disempowered. Even psychological theory is disempowering at times. You're responsible for why your kid is screwed up. How come not the dad? Right? And what kind of unconscious pressure does that put on a woman to put her dreams aside and stay home with her kids? I also think that women have to choose to lean in to their relationships and choose to step into power in an integrated way where they don't throw out their feminine side in order to be powerful. I see a lot of macho women who are incisive and direct and smart, but cold and distant. And the skills that we attribute to feminine are things like nurturance and collaboration and listening and empathy and kind-heartedness. I've been guilty of it. We can't throw out our softness in exchange for power, that we can have both. And I do think that men are starting to experience this. I see this happen in couples where women don't quite know how to be powerful and integrate masculine and feminine. So they will retaliate or rebel in a bunch of different ways, sometimes very overtly and sometimes covertly. And part of the help that they get from me is how to be powerful in relationship that isn't rebellious. It's often very exciting to their partner. It's very passionate, right? Um, but here are some of these ways that women in their attempt to be powerful, actually disempower themselves, at least in their romantic relationships. One, they might cheat. Two, withhold sex. Three, very critical. Lots of criticizing of the man, not realizing that what she really needs is just some shared help around the house. Instead, she'll criticize her partner's masculinity. Um, what are some other ways? Passive aggressiveness, withdrawing, being very cold, competing. I'll see couples really get into power struggles and compete with one another over who does more, who earns more. The other way, though, is interesting where um, the woman will completely retreat and decide, okay, well, I'm not going to get anywhere, so I'm just going to spend a bunch of money and hide it from my partner. Or I'm going to choose to not know anything about how our finances are handled. Um, so, sort of acquiescing in a way to being the underdog, and doing it in full gale force, maybe bankrupting the couple. I shouldn't laugh about that, but um, women have a part to play in not giving up this conversation and continuing the effort to really integrate masculine and feminine, to really integrate nurturance with incisiveness and decision making. And it's a hard thing to do, especially when the culture isn't supporting it. I think the place that we can start, whether it's happening in the workplace or not, because you're pursuing that kind of job, the place to start is in our relationships. I remember a few months ago, I posted these spreadsheets that I found on some other couples therapist websites on my Facebook page. And they were basically assessments for couples to do as they were negotiating how to share household tasks, how to share earning potential, what the necessary financial contribution was to the household. It sort of completely busted a couple out of this notion that the man was going to handle the money and the woman was going to handle the house. It sort of said, no, we're going to each participate, and here's a spreadsheet on how to arrange it. And it included childcare stuff for people with children, like who's going to get up in the middle of the night, right? Who's going to do the morning feeding, who's going to do the evening feeding. And I had some interesting emails on the sly from some women who I would have never, who I perceive as very powerful, admitting to me that these were extremely helpful because even in their powerful careers, it sounded like they didn't feel like they had equal footing at home. So I guess I'm advocating for an increased awareness of how much women are still running the house and how much, in spite of how much they're working, their husbands are not, and how we participate in that. I also am aware that psychotherapy participates too. And I think it's important that we as therapists um, really make known the ways in which our own psychological theory has been influenced by our own gender training, that women are really impressed upon and imposed upon to be more than good enough mothers, but fathers don't have that same imposition. That women are solely left to bear the burden of their own personal ambitions versus family ambitions. Men still aren't left with that internal struggle between personal ambition and family ambition. Women are need to step in and ask their partner to also have to sit with some of these weighty decisions, these weighty choices about family ambition, personal ambition. So that's all I'll say on the matter. I'd love to have you engage with me in this dialogue. So here's what I'd love for you to think about and write me, post a comment here. What are the ways that you personally inside yourself have a hard time integrating masculine and feminine? What are ways that you integrate masculine and feminine really well? What are ways that when you're out of balance with one or the other, you behave? How does this show up in your relationship? How does power show up in your relationship? On the best days, what does it look like? And on the worst days, how do you behave when you feel disempowered? And yeah, I'll love to hear what you have to say. I think it's motivated me for sure. I've got some more surveys that I'm building on power and relationships, so I'm hoping that I'll I'll get those out there soon. All right. It's nice talking to you.